This meeting is being recorded. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pro NoCoders Office Hours, episode 305. I'm your host, Cameron, and today I am with Nathan, Zdinko, and Tanya. Before we begin, we do this 6 times per week where you can bring your bubble questions, bugs, feature requests, so on. We'll help you out. Can't promise answers, but we do promise you will not suffer alone, and we do get it right most of the time. So we'll go ahead and get started. Nathan, I did see you here first before Zdinko, and then Zdinko will hop on over to you. But Nathan, starting out, what are we helping you with today?
I'll show you. So Cameron and Tanya, you both have been nudging me along in some of this process. So I feel like I'm close, and I'm hoping to just kind of get over the edge a little bit, but
Sweet.
I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the way my brain works. So I've updated what I'm trying to accomplish because I feel like I'm close, but I'm still not. I'm still, there's some things that aren't happening. But just a real quick overview. I have users and assets, different types of assets, but they all roll into one global asset category, and then those assets are combined into tasks. So a task, which will always have at least one asset, but could have as many as I guess the admin wants. So a user can watch videos or complete assets at any point. And what I want to do as soon as that is completed, then the asset is marked as complete. What I want to be able to do is every time an asset is complete, it's running through to see if there's a task that the asset is associated with, and if there's more than one asset associated with a task, it checks to see if everything has been completed. If so, then that's marked as complete. And Cameron, I got really close from what you helped me with the other night, but I'm stuck on one part, and I'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
But I really have three questions, and I don't want to be greedy, and if I can help with any of them, that's great. But my question is, how do I assign one task to multiple users? So task number 101, I want to assign it to every user, but then I want to be able to track it individually from each user. So I'm stuck with the way I have things set up now. With the task is it just has a list of all users that it's assigned to, but now in my head I can't figure out how to track it. User number 1 versus user number 100. So that's one piece. And then where I'm stuck, and you helped me with this a little bit, how do I check a single asset may be a part of more than one task? So how do I run the check when an asset is complete? How do I run that on multiple tasks? And then each task has a different combination of individual assets. So I'm stuck on how to run that check. If this asset is completed, it may be a part of more than one task. How do I run that same check multiple times? So what I'm getting stuck on is, am I running that on, making a change to one task, or am I making a change to a list of tasks? And I can't get it to work either way. And then the last step is what you were helping with, Cameron. What's the conditional statement to say if one asset is completed, the task isn't complete until all of the tasks are completed, and I'm stuck on that conditional statement that you were helping with. I tried to duplicate it and it wasn't working for me. So those are the 3 things, and that's the overview.
Gotcha.
So I will. Can you see my bubble screen now?
Yep. Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'll run through each of those and just where I'm at right now. So
sure, yeah, go for it.
I've assigned tasks. So I have just 3 test tasks. Those have been assigned to different people. The problem that I'm running into with tasks, So I'm sure it's just a database structure, but I'm not even sure what change I need to make. So when I have a task, I have the list of assets that are included, 1 or more. The way I have it is a list of users that it's been assigned to. Then I have a list of users that have completed it. So each of those are lists, and then I just have the singular items of what's the name of the task, the description, and when that deadline is. So I want to be able to assign this task to multiple people, but then each of the individual users will be able to complete it on their own. So I'm not exactly sure how to assign it. And then almost it feels like I need to spin it off and make an individual record for each user. But I'm not following how to do that.
Yeah. Well, there's truthfully a lot of different ways that you can go about this, but the way that we have it set up right now, we're using a list of users that we're assigning these tasks to. So one of the places that we want to start is we want to be able to say these users are going to be on this task. So I don't know how this works for you. I believe users are going to be separated into organization, or
it is, yes.
Okay, sort of like a team of sorts, right?
So just think of a company organization as, company one, and then that company has employees. That's the structure. There could be multiple businesses or multiple companies using it, but each one would be completely separate. Each one will have its own employees, its own tasks, its own assets.
Yeah, so we'd want to have that list of users that we want to assign to the task at least handy. We want to say to Bubble, these users from this area are going to be assigned this task. And to do that, the way that I would approach this, at least just testing it and making sure that it works, is with a backend workflow, like those backend workflows, where we'd basically be cycling through all of the users within this organization. And the step on this backend workflow would be to take that user that we're passing in and add them to the task that we're also passing in. So it is a backend workflow where we'd have two parameters that we'd be sending in. We'd be sending in the task and the organization, the users of the organization. So we had done a little bit of those backend workflows together. I was showing you sort of how to get things going on the test page.
Right.
And so typically what you would do, it would be like an on create or like a button click to actually start. So I think it was the visible, the publish button when something is published and visible. So if you don't mind, we can go through that together. We can sort of just like scope it out, show you how it would work.
Sure.
Or I can do it on my end and just show you as an example, sort of like how things would look.
I don't have a problem either way. I think my data is pretty structured over here, which so if we're getting close to it, that actually would probably help me if you want to just do it through mine.
Yeah, I think with your database, the way it's set up, it's probably going to be easier to do that too.
Yeah.
So let's head to the area where the admin's going to create the new task and publish the new task. Is there any area on your application where that happens right now?
No, I just have the display, so I'm doing it all through the back end right now. Because I didn't know what the UX or the UI was actually supposed to be. So yeah, so I don't have a way to create that part of it yet.
Okay, cool, not a problem. Let's go to a test page. Can we just make a test page? I'll sort of get this going for us. And so, like I said, different ways to do it. I think for testing, we're going to use some static variables instead of some dynamic variables, just to show you how it is completed. But what I would do here first, like I said, this is typically going to start off of a button click or when something is true. So for the time being, let's just go ahead and draw a button on there. And what we're going to end up doing is after we draw this button, we're going to go create a backend workflow. We need to create a backend workflow where we pass in the organization users and then the particular task that we want users to be assigned to.
So we're creating the backend workflow first.
Yeah, and we'll just call this assign. And we're going to add two parameters here. The first we could let's call it, with a list of users or organization. Doesn't really matter here. See if we could do this. Yep, perfect. And then the task is going to be that task. Cool, let's go back to our test page because now we need to actually send this information. This is where the static information is going to come through. Yep, so let's schedule that API workflow. Set it from now, sure. And the user, so this is where, like I said, it's going to be static. Typically, we'd be looking at like page data or something of the sort, but for users, let's do a search for, let's take the last items organization. So search for an organization.
So I'll be within, so an admin will already establish an organization. So these will be created within an organization. So I will already be at the organization level and could just look at employees or users from that point on.
That's right. You'd probably look at like current page organization list of users realistically. But yeah, the idea is exactly that.
Okay. So really, I can just do users, right?
You probably could if your users have the organization associated with the record.
Yeah,
but
they do.
I think in terms of speed, actually, we're probably going to be just looking at organization. Because if you have a list of users, let's say you have 700 users, it then has to go through 700 users and find each organization.
Okay.
But if we just say, look at this organization and get the users, it's a little quicker.
Okay. So
we don't need to put any constraints here, but let's do the last item. I like using the last item. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the list of users, the users list. Perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to assign the task. So again, let's do a search for task last item. Cool. And this is 50% there. This is how we're going to assign the users to this organization or the task. So let's go back to our backend workflow. And so now what we need to do is we need to loop through all of these things that are happening. So we're going to make a change, presumably, to a task. So go to data things, make changes. Yep. And it's going to be that task there. And now what we're going to be doing is adding another field, and the user, or assigned to is going to be add user first item. And so what we're doing is we're passing in a list into this backend workflow, into this. That's what we selected in the parameters. We said it was going to be a list. So Bubble knows it's a list. That's why it's giving us the option to select first item. Pretty awesome. I like Bubble when it does that. Now what we're going to do.
Sorry, is it possible to, since we already know it's a list, is it possible to just set the list?
We could set the list, but the reason that we wouldn't here is because what we're doing is we're individually cycling through all of the users. So if we set the list, it would only be one all the time. Now, there may be the option, though, if we delete the first item. I'm wondering, do we have each item's, because we might be able to do each item's like unique ID, perhaps. Or each item's email, perhaps even, because we could set the list through that, and it would do it in bulk. Go ahead and click that. See, does this give us the option? Now it's looking for a particular user. So delete each item's email and see if there is a unique ID. It's typically at the bottom. Each item is unique ID. Does that give us an issue? It does look like it.
Yeah, it's still looking for more information.
Okay. No worries. Go ahead and add or set list. That might be one of the reasons why.
Oh. Set list user.
Just sort of experimenting here.
Yeah. It still wants more information.
That's a good question. I'm sure there is a way to do that now that you mentioned that, but for the time being, let's go ahead and just cycle through all these users here. So then we're just going to say first item, and now we need to tell one more step. We need to tell this workflow get rid of the first item on this list of users and add the next one. So click here to add an action. We're going to go ahead and add another action to this workflow. And we're going to call the same API, the assign. We're just basically telling it, do it again. Keep it going. Oh, you want to do current date time, probably.
Oh.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the user. We're going to go, so user. Now we're minusing the first item off this list. So minus item. Yep, minus item right there. User, first item. And so we just added the first item to the list. So we're telling this workflow, hey, we don't need the first item of this list anymore. Let's get rid of it. And that's what's happening. So now the second item originally in the list is now the first item, if that makes sense. And the task is going to be the same task. And we probably do want to set a conditional where we only do this when the user count is greater than 0. So user count, because it's a list, so we can count it, greater than 0. And so this will automatically stop this workflow from eating up all your CPU. But yeah, so this in itself is the way, probably in its simplest, to get all of the users added to a list. It cycles through all of the users that exist within this organization, and it adds them all, as we are telling it in step 1, to that task individually, one by one by one. So let's go ahead and test this out. This should work flawlessly. In a perfect world, it should work flawlessly. Now, before we do that, though, I guess we do want to look at your data in your organization. The last item, or the most recent item in your app data there. How many users do you have actually currently for
this Cosmosphere is the only one that has any real users. I think there's 38 in there.
Okay, go to the top there. Oh, there's 38 users. Oh, wow. You don't want to have to go through all of that. If not for testing purposes, or if for testing purposes, you can always delete the top 3, or we can change our workflow to look for item number 4 instead of the last item, because that's what we were telling it to do, is look for the last item, which would have been the very first one at the top.
Right. Okay. So back in.
And we would actually, this would be on the front end where we told it to look at the organization. Yeah, so schedule API workflow assign. I'm sorry, the workflow, it's not really the front end, is it? But
yeah, I've got you.
Change the last item to item number. And then 4. And now let's go ahead and click that button. And let's go see on our task, all of the users add.
How is this assigning which task is?
Well, for a very static, because we approach this.
From the last, we did last item. Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to our database here. Let's go look at the tasks. And if we refresh, not looking at any of the users, I'm not thinking.
These were the 3 that I already had put in there.
And one of the reasons, actually, because we're telling it to look at item number 4. I think we need to be telling to look at item number 2, truthfully. Go back to your organizations for me real quick. In your database. Yeah. It would be item number 2, actually. My apologies. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Got to be really, really precise. Okay, like I said, perfect world. Let's do it. Woo.
There it goes.
Yep. And that is, so again, everything would be a little bit more dynamic than the way that we approached it here, just for testing, have a very static values, but this is how you would do it. You would pass in the task, you would pass in the organization, you would tell Bubble, hey, go through all of these users in this list and add them here.
So on my front end, yeah, there they are right there.
Now, I guess this probably bleeds into your next question, where you want to track them individually.
Yeah. So in this is a good sign because it's working the way that I have it set up. But the way now that we did that bulk assigning, but what makes sense is now that I have whatever 35 employees that have been assigned this task, I want to be able to track how many of those 35 or which of those 35 have actually completed this. So to me, it seems like this ideally should create 35 items in this repeating group, because we've assigned it to everyone, and now I can see has Nathan completed it or Joanna or
Yep. And I think that would be with your repeating group structure. Truly, I think you'd be able to actually look at all of the users that exist. It depends on how the repeating group is set up. Probably gonna have to make some modifications to it. Because what you're able to do is you're able to set the source of the repeating group to look at a list of things. So if we say that we want to look at a list of this particular task users as the data source, then we'd be able to see each item individually. So right now we're looking at a total task. We're searching for tasks.
Yeah. So
what we're going to probably want to be doing is searching for tasks. Probably type of content would be users, and then data sources search for tasks, list of assigned users.
So this is actually the task type you're saying is actually user.
Yeah, if I had to think out loud, yeah, that's probably what I'd try. And then for that data source, search for users or search for tasks. Then the red box, the click, we'd probably change that to the list of assigned users if we can. Each item is assigned to. See, does that work for us? That does give us that blue. That's always nice. We like that.
Right.
And from this point, all of the data in the repeating cells are going to be each items. They're going to be users of a particular task.
So type of content is user or task?
For each repeating cell,
It should still be user.
I'm thinking that we probably actually can keep it task. The data source would be current cells user, or click on current cells users and then click on the red button. Yeah, right. And then task assigned. Let's try that the way that your database is structured. No, I apologize. It probably would be user.
Current.
Let's just do current cells user. And this may be breaking your app entirely, and I do apologize. But yeah, this is because what you want to do is absolutely accomplishable just through the data source of the repeating group. Now we're trying to look at data for each user.
Right. So we're looking for tasks. Each item.
Go to parent group's task name. The text that you have.
This is actually
so
a group within a group, but
yeah, no worries. So the task is looking for the parent group's users. We should probably, I guess this is probably going to slow it down just a little bit. We could do a search for a task where this user exists. So the data source would be do a search for.
and this is
do a search for a task. This might be asking for a first item, if I had to guess, but yeah, what we want to do is we want to be able to look up the relationship of the task to the user. So we do a search for a task where the user is in assigned users. Assigned to
contains current user,
parent group's user. This is probably going to ask for a first item, so it might not be exactly what we want. But at the very least, if we refresh this page, we should have like 40 separate cells with task names. And then the user assigned would be just simply the individual user. And let's do that real quick before we take a pause on this and hop over to Zinco, where we are going to, where the type of content should just be current cells user. So we would switch type of content to user. Yeah. There you go.
So do I need to do that same search there?
No, this is already looking at the current cell that exists. And that's what parent group task state is doing too. So all we change is that red text is we just say parent group's name.
Okay.
And then you would also probably have organization and so on and so forth to eliminate any confusion as to who is what and where is how exactly. But that, at least testing with you right now, this is good in my eyes, sort of headed in the right direction.
Right.
Like I said on Wednesday, I'm sorry, I'm sick. My brain is a little slow and sluggish right now. This
Sure,
may,
no.
without Tanya's input, this may completely be the wrong way to do everything.
I have other suggestions.
Yeah, I'm sure there's better ways to do it, but at least in terms of like
I
testing.
can I can share those with you in a little bit, Nathan.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, that's a first step. So even if it's not the best way to do it, I'm learning things now, and it's connecting with me. So I appreciate it, Cameron. And I'll stop and maybe if we can come back if there's still time afterwards to look at that one last question that I had.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you
guys.
for bearing with me. I appreciate you.
Oh, you bet. I appreciate it.
All right, Zdinko.
Hey, Cameron, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you?
It's not too bad, thank you.
Amazing. What are we helping you out with today?
I was on office hours last night with Tanya, and so I've implemented the data structure that we talked about last night, and I just wanted to go over it
Awesome.
Yeah. So should I
Let's
share my screen and I'll
Go for it. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Just to give some perspective here, what I'm looking for, the information that I need is, I need all the companies that have trucks with the truck status of up for share, and I need that number to be visible in this, which is going to be on a cell phone, in fact. So we were talking about doing a search, or a more efficient way of doing a search. And so I restructured the database, but I can show you what I have right now. This works for now with a small set of data, I think. So what I was looking for really is only the cells that have a number greater than 0 to show up. However, of course, here, the type of search that I'm performing, it does all the companies, and then if the number of truck with a truck status up for share is 0, then it does put a 0 here. So I was looking for a better way of searching it. In the editor, what I've done is basically, it's searching for companies, all the companies, and it's loading up all the companies. And then in this field, which gives the numbers, it searches for trucks where the company is the current sales company's company, and the truck status is up for share. And then it performs the count. So, and then I did change the database where I've created a new database called Track Satellite, kind of like a satellite one, where the company in this new data type, we have a company and trucks, which is a list of trucks in it. And then we'd be able to perform the search. And then obviously a company would have a track satellite as a field in it. So, and the truck is already connected to the company. So I think all the data is like we can do this the other way, which I believe would be more efficient way. The only, so there, one of the problems is, I guess if I was to change this data structure right now at this point, how do I populate this data, the newly created data. I would need to populate that in order to get all these numbers. Otherwise, I believe that the numbers would be 0.
Yep. Yeah, so we can do that with a backend workflow. We can go and update your database so that everything is in the satellite data type that needs to be there.
All right, so I would need to do that, and also to do this in the live database as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the amount of work, and also for the next, and also I would need to restructure all the workflows as well to be able to populate this data every time the truck or the new company or the new truck is created or changed, edited.
Yeah. So that's where, yeah, I would use the same. Because that's going to be working at human speed after you do the recursive workflow that's going to create all of the satellite records. Then I would use a database trigger to keep those records in sync with the actual truck availability, like if it's available to share. And then that way you don't have to worry about it going forward. You don't have to go back and change other workflows. What you have will work.
Oh, we
already.
have a recursive workflow working on it all the time.
Well, not a recursive. It would be a database trigger. So just every time the truck's availability changes, we can trigger the change in the satellite as well if we need to. So I think, yeah. So I don't think you're going to have to do too much refactoring to get this done. And the recursive workflow to create the satellite data types will also be like pretty simple. Just since you'd only needed once, I would just go and write it for you. It's not a big deal.
So, yeah, I see.
And
other than that, because for testing purposes, how many users, if I was to leave it this way, what are we talking about? We were talking about lists, Tanya, last night. And what time, kind of at what number of users or companies would I be running into problems of running this search on the phone or a smartphone device?
Probably pretty fast because you're doing a search in every single cell of the repeating group.
Yeah.
It'll slow down pretty quickly.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So yeah, I believe I would have to do this, and then what I was looking at pretty well, the way the database is structured. I mean, we've run into this with the truck right now, but really, I did have and do have a problem with the rest of them too, the job site, material site, and all these other ones. It's really hard to find where the truck is. So what I've done is I have 9 repeating groups running on top of each other, and this is a problem. So, but this could be solved kind of in the same way, I'm believing, right? Kind of looking at it this morning, I think the rest of it the database structure would need to be changed pretty well in this same way. And so that it would be a lot easier to to perform a search to find out where this truck is at any one moment when we need it.
Yeah.
To be able to create satellites for these other ones as well, then.
So I don't know that you need satellites for each of those, because the trucks are the reason that we needed a satellite data type was because you didn't, and I get it, you didn't want to put a list of trucks on the company, right? And so what we did instead is I called it an inventory, right? Yes. So the inventory belongs to a company and has a list of trucks. And It was just standing in for that field that you could put on the company, but it's okay that you didn't want to. Instead. And then the way that, here, I'll just share my screen so Cameron can follow along in case he has other ideas. So instead of doing a search for companies,
Right.
we made the type of content of the repeating group company, and then we did a search for trucks
Yes.
that were available or shareable, right?
Right.
And then we took, I'll just take this off because that's irrelevant. So this was our search for trucks, and then we got all of the trucks that were available, and then we got a list of companies from there because each truck references a company. And then we took only the unique companies out of that list. And that's what gave us our list of companies with trucks to share, which will be a much smaller list than a search of all of your companies. Then from that, in order to show the number of those trucks that are available, we made the satellite data type, which I'm calling inventory. We made it a field on the company, so the company has an inventory thing.
Right.
And then the inventory has a list of trucks that we could filter down to the ones that are available and give the count.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. But I'd be careful with that. I'd only use it if you need it. I think that, I think it's perfectly reasonable to put a field on a truck that says current job site, that at the beginning when they're assigned, you update that field. You could even probably do it with a database trigger, update that field to where it is, and then update it when they're done. And that way you don't have to create more data types to keep track of where the trucks are.
Yeah, I think Cameron and I kind of discussed this as one of the lessons, and I didn't. I will go back because they're up on the YouTube right now, so I'll look for that. But yeah, I'm gonna. This is pretty easy for me to delete. So if I need to, but I need to look at the database a little bit more now, because these are the things that the users are asking for now, and I think I have to take that into account and set up this. Probably go back to square one now. Take a look at the database first. I think which should have been done in the first place.
Oh man, but you can't. So don't be like. I mean. With hindsight is way better, right? Like we always figure out things that we need to readjust in a database, like as we go forward. And so it actually, like, I've only been doing Bubble for a little less than 2 years now, and product management for a little over a year. And I can sit there and really think hard about a database, and yet I still, as I'm building, have to go back and adjust, right? So these are things that you're going to find out, and we could talk about, it would have been better to do this from the beginning, but you didn't know then. So now you know, and you can change it.
Okay.
So, but that's normal. Like, don't feel bad about it. That's typical.
To build up what Tanya said, it's a very iterative process. Happens to everybody, so no worries.
Right. Yeah, I think I need to spend the weekend looking at this a little bit more just to understand it. And as I mentioned last night, I'm looking at Peter's. I bought Peter's book too, so that this data satellites and everything, I am getting a little bit more knowledge about setting it in certain different ways. It's just that understanding, like what gets searched on the server, and then what gets dumped onto the browser, and where does the client do most of the work and stuff like that. I think that's I'm pretty shady on that still, in order to understand, like even this morning, what I went through what you talked about, Tanya, last night. So I'm still kind of going through this instead of like, okay, what really happens and what are the benefits, right? Instead of searching the whole data type of companies and then searching again for the trucks of those companies, and then performing a count. I guess in our case, so last night, we're already creating a list of these trucks that a company has, and then that list has already been searched on the server, and then the browser basically goes through that list, which has already been the results of that list are already known. Am I correct in that kind of?
Yeah, so Bubble is really smart. It won't, if you do duplicate searches on the page, it won't do the search again. It just caches the search, and it will use the same search for all of the results. So we don't have to worry about that, which is good. And then anytime you're doing a search for, so like in this repeating group, this search here, this is my primary constraint. This is going to make my search faster. The narrower, or so the more constraints I can put here so that I get fewer results back from Bubble, the faster my search is going to be, because that's going to the server. The server is really fast, and then it sends back the information. The less information the server has to send, the faster I'm going to get it, the better it's going to work out. Then anything that happens from filtering, like here, filtering is happening. This is a secondary constraint. I call these my secondary constraints. This is happening on the user's browser, and it requires the browser to work, but it's still pretty quick because it's just looking at the advanced part. If I were to do an advanced here, then sometimes I end up having to do a search, and then that has to go back through Bubble, and that's why we wouldn't want to do advanced in that way. But this is actually pretty quick too, because all the information for the inventory here, this is preloaded. Like, I'm not searching the database. The database doesn't have to perform a query. It already knows the inventory thing in the database because it was loaded when we loaded the companies. So this is a pretty efficient thing.
Okay, so in my case, in this current cell, when I said do a search of trucks, is this the data source is do a search for truck? Is this performed by the browser, or is this coming from the server already performed?
The search, the search for trucks on the repeating group is
on the cell, I mean.
On the cell, this is
right. I had it as do a search for, right? But right now we already have a list of
the company's inventory. If I understand what I read in the same book that you're reading, the company's inventory is loaded with the company, because it goes and gets all of the information from each of the company and pulls it in. So we're not doing searches here. We're just saying references that Bubble already has loaded on the page.
Yes. And in my case, if I revert it to the way I have it right now, in that cell, I am performing a search of trucks.
And that's not performant.
Where is this search performed in this cell if I was to leave it like this?
If you left it like, no, that was, when you were doing a search for trucks, you were making another query back to the server on every cell.
Oh,
so if you had
query back to the cell, I see.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then
which is what we don't want.
Performs every query and has to go through all the companies and go back and forth to the server all the time.
Yep, which is what we don't want.
I see. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. I don't want to take up too much time. I think and then someone else is there too. Thank you very much. I need to look at this a little bit more on the weekend. It's really good information. I just need to digest it a little bit more.
Totally understand.
Yeah, okay. So this goes back to the server every time from here, from the current cell, if we perform a search. I see. So there's constant time for every item in the cell. For every cell, the server goes back. So let's say there were 50 items in this cell, and depending on the number of cells shown, if the user scrolls down in the cell, then it say opens up 3 more cells, it needs to go back to the server 3 more times and calculate this and throw it back to the browser. Am I correct?
Exactly. Yep,
I
that's
see.
right.
All right, so that's how it works, right? Okay. All right, guys. Yeah. Time to move on to someone else. But hopefully we'll see you on Monday. And if I have any questions.
Yeah, have a great weekend, Stinko.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great weekend.
You as well, definitely.
Too, guys. Thanks, Cameron, as well.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate this.
Yes, of course. Hey, Nathan.
Right, Nathan. Yeah. You have that last question. Is that right? Wondering just how to verify that all the tasks or all the assets within a task have been verified.
Yeah, so I'll share my screen again if I can.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I think, is a quick one. So I've got 2 questions. This, I think, is a quick one, but on the back end. So Cameron, I took what you did. One of the steps I moved around a little bit, and then I just adjusted the second step that you did. But here's where I'm at. So this is my API workflow to mark tasks as complete, or to check to see if I can mark them as complete. So this starts. This starts here. So once an asset is complete, and this is another part that you had, Cameron, but once an asset is complete, I'm doing several things here. I'm duplicating some, I'm creating records in a couple of different places right now, just because I'm trying to figure out what I actually need, and can remove these later. But once an asset is complete, I'm scheduling this workflow, and I'm sending the asset and the current user to the back end. So an asset has been complete, which then means possibly a task could be complete if all of the other assets are there. So when I go back to the back end workflow, here's where I'm at. So I'm pulling in the asset and the user, and then from what I can tell, it's I think it's just one step. But my first question is, because one asset could be a part or could be attached to multiple tasks, could be built into multiple tasks. My first question is, when I'm running this, I couldn't get it to work either way, but am I making a change to one task, or am I making a change to a list of things? So a list of tasks potentially. And if there's 2 different tasks that have the same asset in it, I need to run and check to see if task number 1 is complete. And then I also need to check to see if task number 2 is complete, if all of the assets. And so I'm stuck there. I couldn't figure out what the right way to test that is. Right now, I just have it. I'm making a change to a thing. I'm making a change to one task. But then I'm stuck with doing either first item or last item, which in my head works fine for one of them. But what if there's 2 or 3 or more other tasks out there that have the same asset? So I'm not sure how to run that. That's my question number 2 that I had right there.
Yeah. So you're actually right. Sometimes there may exist multiple assets within, or one asset within multiple tasks. And so we have it set up very simply right now, where we're just making a change to that task. And we can change this to where we're going through lists of items, in this case, tasks, and comparing the assets. So one of the things that we would probably change first and foremost, starting off, is the Cpi workflow. We'd be sending in a list of assets or a list of tasks that include that asset. And so that would be conducted on the front end there. Well, first off, we'd want to set a parameter on the API workflow. So if we click on that blue box, we do have the asset as a single asset, but realistically, we'd also want to be passing in a list of tasks, because we want to cycle through these tasks if there's more than one, in which case. So we would add a new parameter called task, and it would be a task, and it would be a list or array. And so the way that my brain's working here is that I'm thinking what we'll do is on the front end, we'll search for all the tasks that include this asset. And then on our workflow, we'll be looking at each individual task and saying, hey, are all of the assets completed within this task done? If so, mark this task as completed. And then it'll go on to the next task, and it'll ask the same question. are all the assets completed within this task completed? And then it will say yes or no, obviously. And it'll just cycle through that way, if that makes any sense.
It does. So how, and this is just, I'm trying to think through this. How is that different than when I'm doing a search or a list? I'm doing a search here. How is that different than doing a search on the other end is really what I guess I'm trying to ask, but I'm doing a search here to find a list, any tasks that have where the assets of the task includes the task, or includes the asset, plus it's also assigned to the user. So I don't,
well, right now at the very moment, we're looking at the last item. So we're only looking at one item at a time. And I mean, realistically, that's what we're going to be doing with the backend workflow, the looping process. But here it's very static. We're just looking at the last item. So
let me get this straight. You're trying to track who has completed each task, right?
Yeah. So this API workflow is going to be triggered by one user completes watches a video, completes an asset. So this isn't an organization. This is not organization wide. This is going to be triggered by one user that completes a video, which is an asset. That asset could be a part of a task or more than one task. So I'm running this check to see if this task has been completed by that user, one user.
Okay, can you show me the data screen and the data type for task?
So this goes along a little bit with what we were just building. So right now the task, it includes one-time information. So what's the task name, description, and deadline. But then this one task includes one or more assets, and it could be assigned to one or more users, which is what Cameron just helped me with that first time. So we've assigned it to multiple users. And then when it's completed, it could be completed by basically the same list in theory, but it could be completed by one or more users. So I'm not, my first question was, I'm not sure that this is the right way to do this, because although we worked out, I would like to see, once I assign it, in my head, it ends up being one record for every user that was assigned. And right now it seems like we have one task that just has a lot of users built into it. So maybe that's right, but in my head, when I assign it to 30 users, it should be 30 rows in a database in my head. But I know that may or may not be right. But
no, I think your instinct on that is probably right. You can do it this way. But then when you're trying to look at things and query things, you might run into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, I want to know if, how many tasks Kara has completed. I'm going to share my screen. And it could be, she could have been assigned. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen, am I?
No, I'm sharing mine.
Okay. So while the way it's set up now, I can see being good if I wanted to look at it from the task standpoint. What it doesn't seem to work well for is if I want to look at it from the employee specific or the user specific, because then that user could have actually been assigned multiple tasks, and I don't know how I would pull that information the way it's structured now. But I just don't know.
Right. Well, I think you're right. And so here's sort of my from what I understand, here's how I would set it up. Of course, you can have your user will have a company of type company, I guess. Are there multiple companies that are involved in this? Or just one?
It goes from the organization has users. A user would never be to more than one organization. So
okay,
organizations,
but there would be multiple organizations, right?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Okay, so we would organization of type organization then. And we'll just, everywhere you see company, we'll replace it with organization.
Right, sorry,
so then it's okay, no. And then you'd have your task, which would have which would belong to an organization of type organization. Your user of type user, complete of type yes or no, then assigned assets of type asset, which would be a list, and then user assets of type user asset, which would be a list, then the task template of type task, and this will make sense after I explain the flows. Then the task is considered a template if the user field is empty. So if there's no user assigned to it, then that task is going to be used as a template. Then you would have assets, which is what you were talking about, this global asset thing. So which would be assigned to tasks of type tasks. So an asset can belong to several tasks. Then asset type of asset type option set. This is just for the dropdown when the asset is being created.
Right.
And then video, if it's a video, it'll be a video file. If it's a quiz, then you would need another data type called quiz.
Right.
And then you'd have the user asset. The user asset will also have an asset of type asset, and it'll be assigned to a user. And then I'll have tasks of type tasks because it can be the asset will have these tasks. And so the tasks of type task, this would be user tasks, right? Then, and we'll just grab it from the ones that are assigned to the user that are referring to the same asset. Complete of type yes or no, and then the date that it's completed, because I'm sure that's going to be of interest later. Then we'll have the flows would go like the company or organization. Admin creates the organization. Then it creates assets, it creates tasks, and it assigns assets to tasks. Then it assigns users to tasks, which is where the user task is created, and also the user assets as needed are created with no duplicates. Meaning if the same asset belongs to multiple tasks that are then assigned to the user, you would only have one user asset for each asset that could be assigned to multiple tasks. Following? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the user would complete a user asset, right? So when they watch the video, the user asset is what gets completed. And since it's already part of the user task here, we just set up a database trigger that when the user assets count is user assets filtered to complete count, we'll go ahead and mark the task as complete.
So
and this gives you the cross-referencing in the database that you need to run the reports you want.
So user asset is what?
The user asset is what Zdenko would call a satellite data type. It's just, it's a way of tracking the tasks that are assigned. So they're going to be task templates that are not assigned to users. And then every user, when they're assigned a task, will have a new record called a task record. And then attached to that will be a number of user assets, one for each asset that they need, unique asset across all of their tasks. The trickiest part of this is when you are creating a new task based on the template. That's easy. It's when you are creating user assets as needed, and you need to make sure there aren't duplicates. But then everything else is really easy.
The user asset is the piece that, I mean, it's not clicking in my head, but I don't think that's the one piece out of all of that I don't think I have.
Yep. It's so what you would do is they assign a task to the user. I would make it so that they would assign all of the tasks and then click a button, right? And then I would do a recursive workflow that creates all of the tasks first. Then I would do a search for all of those tasks, references to the assets. and I do unique items and then recursively create user assets so that you don't have any duplicates.
So a user asset is just a list of assets.
Nope, a user asset is one asset. So it's one record that has one asset and one user, but multiple tasks. And this is how you're going to complete the asset across multiple tasks, is because whether or not the task is complete is going to be this list, the user assets list. When those are all complete, that's when you trigger this to complete to yes.
So when a user completes an asset, watches a video, and that completing asset, they're actually the asset category for there is just the information. It's the user asset that's actually getting the actionable item.
Exactly. Yep.
And then a task is made up of completing the user asset is what's triggering the check to see if a task has actually been completed.
Right, because if I put this in my database, I would go here and I would say 305 user asset and 5 asset. And so then in my user asset, I'm going to have a list of assets. Like that. And then in my backend workflow, you just treat these, the user asset itself, you just keep going with it, right? So we've got complete, yes, no. I'm sorry, the user asset is not a list of assets. It only references one. It's the task that has a list of user assets. Right, and user assets have complete yes or no. So then in my database here, my backend workflows, I can create a new trigger. And the trigger, the type is going to be a task. And I'll say task now's user assets count is task now's user assets filtered, where the complete equals yes count. So when those things are true, when both the total count of the user assets and the total count of complete user assets are the same, that's when you would make a change to the task. And the task would be complete.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's different from the way like you've put things together. I would say it's a pretty significant database change.
Yeah.
From what you have. But I can share this with you if it would be helpful. I can share this link with you.
So I'm sorry. So what is triggering? So the way I have it now is the completion of an asset is what's triggering is what I was using to trigger that that backend workflow now. What is triggering? What is triggering this backend workflow that you have right now?
Oh, it's Bubble would be listening for when this statement is true about any given task in your database. So this is a database trigger. It's just Bubble is listening for any task where all of the user assets are marked complete. And when that's true, it goes in and it marks the task as complete.
Okay. Well, that concept makes sense. What I guess because that I'm missing those database pieces, I can't connect in my head where, you know what,
right,
how that fits together.
Right. So you have the user is completing, you have it right now where they're watching an asset. And when they finish watching a video or completing a quiz that's an asset, you mark that asset as
I add them to the completed.
You
list.
add them to the completed. Right. This is they're still doing the same thing, but when they're done with that thing, you're triggering it to complete the user asset instead of switching them which list they're on.
So an asset is where the details are, the video ID, name, things like that. If I complete an asset and it's not assigned to me yet, is there still a user asset being created? When is the user asset being created?
The user asset is created when the user tasks are created. So when you're not keeping track of tasks, it's not one task for all users anymore. It's an individual task thing for every user.
Okay.
But also, can you create the user asset when the asset is completed though as well? Can you also do it that way?
Yeah. So if I watch a video before it's even been assigned to me, how do I? So I'm a tryhard and I watch all the videos first, and then later on I get a task assigned to me that includes one of the videos I've already watched.
Yeah, this can be independent of tasks. You can add the tasks later.
So we're keeping track of those user assets, which is tied to a user. And then what you're saying about no duplicates is when a task is assigned, it's creating user assets. And at that point is where we would need to check to see, does it already exist? If not, then it needs to be created.
A user would never have two user assets where the asset would be the same asset.
Right. And it's the user asset that contains the date. Is it completed? Yes or no? And if so, when it was completed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Well, the concept makes sense. It feels like I'm going to go through and I'm going to create this database, and I'm still going to come back to the same spot of now, how do I trigger even a little bit of the concept of the backend workflows and stuff, which, okay.
Yep. The flows here, this part. So Cameron made a good point. You don't necessarily have to create the user asset until they've watched a video or completed the quiz. And then you can create the user asset. And then they will all be complete. So you might not even need this complete field here.
Okay.
But this way you're tracking what they are doing in terms of the assets, independent of the tasks. The task part comes later, right? So you would when you create a task, you would go and look for any of the user assets that have assets belonging to this list. And then you would add those user assets here. But then we would have to change that other workflow, Cameron.
Yeah, there's a significant amount that would need to be modified to accommodate for these changes. But this is also really similar to what I can't remember the individual, but on Friday they had mentioned that relational database objects were probably a little bit better for this particular reason. Whereas we were just approaching it from what's the simplest way to get users assigned to a task and then to compare task and asset, et cetera, et cetera. But then also in addition to that, though, one of the things that I had shown you just the other day, the form builder that I was building, Nathan,
Right.
it operates in a really similar fashion to this, which I wanted to show you was the nesting of the data, sort of like the relationship between all of the data types, where you're just comparing, in this case, like the user asset to the amount of, or to the asset to the tasks and so on and so forth. So if you do need to look at that again, I can show you. I know Tanya is choosing to share this with you as well. But
Yeah,
I think this will be in your favor.
I think this list is my next step. So this is just, so I guess in my nature, I'm just on a short deadline. So this feels like a step back so I can go forward, which I completely understand. I'm just now trying to figure out how do I get this done in time. So, but yeah, I think if you don't mind sharing this so I can read through this and kind of process a little bit. And
Yeah. I just sent you the link in the chat.
Yep, I got it. Perfect. Okay.
All right.
Can I,
if you need any assistance or help, I'll be able to get on with you and help you out.
Sure. Yeah. Is that backend? Can I look at your backend workflow again real quick?
Mm-hmm.
So we're the trigger.
So right now, this is assuming that you've created all of the user assets ahead of time. If you switch it to the way Cameron was suggesting, where you only create the user asset as they complete the asset, then you would compare the list of assigned assets count to the count of the user assets, and when they're equal, that's when you would flip it.
And that's what Nathan and I had constructed on Wednesday as well.
Okay.
Just like the comparative logic at the very least.
Right.
Yeah. So then what I would do is I would switch this and say where task now's assigned tasks or assigned assets. Oh, wait, what happened? Let me clear this. So task now and then assigned assets, which would be of type asset list here. Count is task now's user assets count. Then you would trigger it to be complete. And then you have access to this editor as well, Ethan, so you can go in and check that out.
That second link you sent, that's to the editor?
That's to the editor where you can find this workflow.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay. Well, I suppose progress isn't always easy to swallow sometimes, but everything makes sense. I just need to now think through where I'm at right now based on kind of where that new document. I mean, I have a lot of those fields. Obviously naming and things are different. I just have to figure out what I have now and what I need to build, and then what changes that's going to impact throughout my current workflows. So
thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Right.
Appreciate your help.
You're welcome. Cameron, should we go to office or after hours?
Yeah, let's make our way to after office hours. For those that have been tuning in or those that are with us now, thank you so much. Going to turn off the camera, so if we are ever to share any personal or sensitive information, you don't have to worry about it getting leaked. Join at pronocoders.com, signing up for the developer membership. And until next time, you guys have a good one.